Hello everyone, how are you doing? My name is Felipe Barreto. I'm the cloud sales leader at eCore, and recently I came from Solving. I was one of the founders of Solving, a company that was recently acquired by eCore, and now I'm heading the development of cloud businesses here at eCore. Besides that, I also organize the AWS security group in Rio, Brazil, and then I also am recognized as an AWS hero, AWS community hero for the work in developing cloud computing communities. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how to leverage the AWS Well-Architected framework for a successful cloud journey. So we're going to go through what is the Well-Architected framework and how we can use that depending on where we are in our cloud journey. So let's get to it. First, a little bit about motivation. So before cloud especially, sometimes we had to make a decision. Are we gonna work on security, or are we gonna speed things up and go fast with deliveries and focus in agility? And before cloud, it was hard to do both because we wanted to launch some servers, start everything, but we had to ask for the security team to do that, and the security team is kind of known back in the days for saying no to everything, and that was sometimes a challenge. But now when we talk about cloud computing, we can actually do both. We can actually have security, we can have agility. We have mechanisms that we can use to guarantee that the team that's developing new solutions has autonomy to launch new services while still being compliant with the company's policies, with all of the compliance rules. And the Well-Architected framework will help us with that, among other things. So, bringing the definition of the Well-Architected framework for us to start. So it's a framework designed to provide high-level guidance and best practice to help build and maintain secure, reliable, performant, cost-optimized, and operational excellent applications in the AWS cloud. So a few important points related to the definition and also some attention points. So first, it says high-level guidance. So I don't really like the name Well-Architected. I think it's a really nice name for marketing and for sales. I mean, it sounds good, Well-Architected, but it kind of takes us in the wrong direction. When I hear Well-Architected, I think, oh, someone's going to review my architecture. They're going to tell me if I should use service A, B, or C to solve my challenge. And that's not what it does. Like the definition says, it gives us a high-level guidance to help build and maintain. So it won't tell me what service I should use, but it will help me build, but in a high level manner. So what does that mean? It will help me to know what do I have to take in consideration when I have to choose the service I'm going to use for a specific challenge. So that's kind of why I don't like the name that much, because I think it takes us in the wrong direction, and also maintain and operate looking for these 5 pillars. And recently there's a 6th pillar, that's sustainability, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. So that's the first thing I like to mention: high level best practices, build and maintain. It won't give us a specific service that we need to use in our architecture. And another thing is that other cloud solution providers, they also have their Well-Architected framework, and they are quite similar. So the concepts behind them are kind of similar. But of course, when we look at the AWS Well-Architected framework, when we think about the solutions, it is natural that we go in the AWS direction. However, the framework can be used regardless of being in the AWS or not. Is when we talk about the remediations or solving the findings that we have on our Well-Architected review that we'll talk about later, that's when the cloud comes up. So the framework, it's kind of generic enough, but when we talk about the specific solutions, we'll look a little bit more in the AWS environment. And a few key principles related to the Well-Architected framework. What are like the key points that will come? It's the framework itself. It's about an 80-page white paper. I recommend everyone to read it, even though if you're not developing things, it will really give you an idea of what are the best practices, because a lot of the times I see companies working in the cloud and say, oh, my team knows everything, we know that we're doing things well, or we know we have these challenges, but related to what? And when we have the framework behind it, we can do that together. So a few key principles behind the framework. First of all, stop guessing the capacity. That's something that will come up. We're talking about cloud. We don't have to try to guess the capacity before we start building. We could be fast, we could test, and then we can adjust the capacity. Test systems in production scale. I mean, cloud gives us a lot of tools for testing. We have infrastructure as code, where we can fastly generate a whole infrastructure. We can test, we can turn it off, and we can pay only for what we use. So that's something that the framework brings also. Automate and make it easy to experiment. Like I said, infrastructure as code. If we have scripts that could build and destroy our infrastructure, that's something really nice. For example, one thing that the framework says, and we do it internally, we have what we call like sandbox accounts, where a developer, he wants to test a new solution. He could create an account already with all our security rules, test, and then it turns off, so we don't even have the risk to have something running. Actually, like the account is deleted and the costs are taken care of. And build architectures ready to evolve. That's something that is also really important, because sometimes I see companies try to build their architecture that will last for so many years, and that's probably not a good approach, because things are developing so dynamically and there's so many new solutions that our architectures need to be ready to evolve. We talk a lot about microservices, and we have different parts of the application, of our workloads that we could change. So our architecture needs to evolve when there's a new solution, or even when our customers change. They start using something else, they want something new. So we have to build an architecture that is always ready to evolve. If we're building something that we'll think that is going to last for many years, we're probably not approaching it right. Make data-driven decisions. We have so many tools in the cloud to help us understand our workloads, understand our customers' behavior, and we can improve on that. We don't have to guess. And finally, improve our architecture through event simulations in production. We could, like I said, launch an environment replicating everything. We could test that. There's a really nice use case from Netflix. If you want to search, they talk about chaos engineering and testing really in production scale in outage to see how the application behaves, and that's really nice. So the cloud gives us tool to do that, and that's how, with all these things, we can have security and agility together, among other things. So, giving a big overview about what the well-architected framework is, we already went through the definition. First of all, it is divided in 6 pillars: operational excellency, security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and launched at the end of 2021, I think. The white paper, I think, was updated March 2022. We have the sustainability pillar. And they are in that order on purpose. When we do a review, we don't have to follow that order. I'm going to explain later what a well-architected review is, but we will follow the order according to our priorities, but this order is there for a reason. For example, the white paper has been evolving. There were other pillars, they reduced the pillars. Operational excellence wasn't one of the first ones, but now it is one of the first, because people sometimes don't think it's that important, but it really gives us tools and practices to help with all the other pillars. And each pillar, they are divided in a few sections. And these sections are divided in questions, and these questions are divided in items. So, for example, the operational excellency pillar, it talks about organization, preparation, operation, and evolution of our workload. So it's going to help us understand how we organize our operations, how we prepare to operate, how we actually operate, and how we evolve the operation over time. When we talk about security, we have like what we call like kind of a security culture in our company. We have identity management, we have detection of problems, we have infrastructure protection, data protection, and incident response. So we're going to look at those aspects when we build and operate our workloads in the cloud. We have reliability, so we talk about the foundations of our workload. That's something that's really important. We want our solutions to be reliable. We want it to work as it's supposed to work all the time. So first of all, we need the foundations to prepare for that. We have the architecture, and that's the example I said. We have to, it's not going to tell us exactly what service to use. Of course, it's a framework. It gives us a high-level overview. Each company does it its own way, but it helps us understand what do we need to consider when making a decision. We have change management, and also failure management. When we talk about performance and efficiency, we have selection, we have review, we have monitoring, and we have trade-offs. Why do we have trade-off? Because increasing performance in the cloud, that's quite easy. Increase the compute power. It's going to make your performance better, but it's not efficient. It will give you more performance, but not in an efficient manner, and that's going to impact the cost optimization pillar. So when we look at the pillars, that's quite interesting because we need to look at them together as a complete solution, and that's a little bit of what trade-off is going to bring. When we talk about cost optimization, we talk about cloud financial management. I see a lot of companies that try to manage the cloud costs, kind of what they did in the past, but there are new practices, there are new roles, and there is a very important need for a cultural alignment. Expansion and usage awareness. A lot of companies don't do that so well. They know how much they're spending in the cloud, but they don't know where, they don't know the cause of it, and that's some best practices that we bring. Cost efficient resources, once again, choosing the right resources related to cost. Manage demand and supply. So the cloud's always evolving, the workload is changing, our customers are changing, so the cloud is dynamic. We can increase, we can reduce, we have to manage that demand and supply, and optimize over time. Like I said, we can't think we build something that's going to work like that forever. We have to always optimize over time. And sustainability. So this is the most recent one. I'm going to talk about high risk, low risk later on. And when we talk about sustainability, as of now, AWS didn't consider anything here as high risk. There are things that are nice to have, but it won't impact our operations. But moving forward for the coming years, it is something that we see companies are looking a lot more at. So we've done some well-architected reviews. We thought some of the companies weren't going to care about this pillar. Because it's not directly giving them business, but we were really positively impressed that companies are starting to look more at sustainability. So it talks about selecting the region, user patterns, and it kind of relates with other pillars. For example, if we have a workload that's not efficient, if we're spending more compute power than we need, of course, it's not performance and efficiency, it's not cost optimization, it's not cost optimized, but it's not sustainable. We're spending much important resources such as energy that we could save. So that's kind of how the sustainability pillar looks at it. We have architecture pattern, data patterns, hardware patterns, and the development process. Like I said, it will look if we're not spending more than we need, and that's impacting our environment. So giving a quick look of how complex and big the well-architected framework is, this is a kind of a big picture, and it's not all of it. So in the middle, I don't know if you can see my, can you see? No, you can't see my cursor here. Okay, you can't see it. But in the middle, yeah, you can see it. So in the middle here, we have the pillars, the 6 pillars. For each pillar, we have the sections. So we have the sections. And for each section, we have the questions. And it's not drawn here, but for each question, we have items. For example, I won't know this by heart, but talk about security. Let's say security, identity management. Let's say security operations, for example. Let's say maybe it has 10 items according to that question. And that's how we're going to go up and understand from the item how good we're doing with the questions, how well is the section, and finally, each pillar by itself. So that's an overview of the framework itself, and let's talk a little bit about the journey. How our company becomes well-architected. It's not something that we change it from night to day. It's something that it will take some time. And how does that journey look like? It always start with what we call a well-architected review. What's a well-architected review? I'm gonna give a little bit more details about it, but basically, it's a workshop where someone that's trained in the well-architected framework will help the company to understand how they are doing related to the well-architected framework. With that in mind, after we have the results from the workshop, we can build an action plan. We can prioritize what's more important for us, what are the pillars that are more important, what are the sections, what are the items, what's a higher risk, what's a lower risk, and we can work on that over time. And that work over time is what we call remediation. So over time, we make improvements, we fix the things that are considered high risk, medium risk, and we'll have an evolution of our workload, of our best practices, and finally we'll build milestones. So that's kind of a cycle. We register in the Well-Architected tool that I'm going to show up next, the milestones and evolving over time. And another important thing, there are a lot of tools that will say, oh, this tool will give you will say if you're well architected or not. You need to be careful with that, because going back at the definition, the well-architected framework gives us a high-level overview of best practices and all. And there are a few questions, that are specific. For example, if you're using multi-factor authentication, a tool can look at that. But a lot of the questions are related to processes, are related to culture. For example, an alignment between the technical team and the business part of the company, the stakeholders and all that. That's not something a tool will be able to see. So we say tools are able to get around 20% of the insights. They are important to use, like third-party tools to help with the review process. We like to do that. However, they don't replace someone that's specialized and trained in the well-architected framework to understand how your business does things so they can develop over time. So going at the well-architected tool, it's not the third-party tools I was talking about. It's the tool that will help us do the review. First of all, if you have an AWS account, you can log in, you can search Well-Architected. It's available for you. You'll see the Well-Architected tool. You can log in, you can see how it works. And inside the Well-Architected tool, we'll be able to create reviews. So a review is related also to a workload. It will ask for some information. Who's the owner? If you have an architecture diagram, you can upload because it will generate a report. And we can have several reviews. So one review per workload, that's kind of what we recommend. And basically the tool, if you look at it in a really simple way, it's a checklist. But I don't like to say it's a checklist because it's not that easy to come here and select, oh, identity is good, security is good, performance is good. Because sometimes we don't know what good means. That's why some architects are trained in the well-architected framework. And the minimum requirement for someone to be certified as for the training in the well-architected framework is that they have a professional level certification in AWS. So that's kind of a high knowledge requirement for that. So for each question, here is how do you back up data. It has a short explanation here. Let's see, you can see my cursor, if it doesn't apply to a workload, you can check that. I've seen companies do that for some questions. Of course, backup usually applies to the workload. And for each question, you have the items, okay? So these are the items related to the workload. And each item, they are separated in something that is high risk, medium risk, or low risk according to AWS. And a question is considered high risk if at least one, so one or more items that are considered high risk aren't checked. If all of the items considered high risk are checked and are okay, if there's an item that is medium risk, the question will be considered as a medium risk question. And finally, if it's considered low risk, if all of the high risk and medium risk are considered okay, AWS considers that the question is resolved. We like to separate things. We like to look at low risk too. It's of course a low priority of resolving, but we like to separate that. And everything is checked. We consider that the question is 100% okay. But sometimes you don't know, okay, so how do you back up data? I want to learn more about that. So we can come here, click on this info button next to the question. It will give us some important resources and how to understand. So we have what is AWS backup. Here we're already talking a little bit about the AWS solutions for backup. It will give us reInvent lectures about it. So if you want to learn, see videos. It talks about the AWS services, about backup encryption, marketplace solutions that can help us on that. So it will give us a lot of information that we can use to improve our backup. And for each item, the same thing. Sometimes I don't know what that item means. So what does it mean to identify and back up all data? So if we click here, it gets us a little bit of the white paper related to that information, and it will give you service. So we talk a lot about AWS S3. That's a AWS simple storage service for backup. So it gives us a quick explanation on that, so we understand what the question is. But like I said, this is why it's important to have someone that's actually trained in the well-architected framework to help us understand and answer the questions appropriately. I've seen companies that did the well-architected review by themselves, and then they hired us to help them with that. And then they saw, oh, I thought this was okay, but it's actually not following best practices. Or vice versa. They said it wasn't okay, but we explained the best practices and it was okay. So that's why it's important to have someone that has done this and can help develop that over time. And well, if it doesn't apply, it won't matter. But here, when we show this is the white paper for that same question. So this was the first part, talking about S3 and all. It's the same thing that was here, but we have more information. So it gives us a little bit more explanation when we look about the white paper, but still nothing will replace experience related to that. And finally, in the white paper, we also have the helpful tools, and we definitely recommend the labs. So the labs really help us have a hands-on experience improving our workloads. But if we look back here, we're talking about 52 questions that go to around, actually 58 questions now with the sustainability pillar, which go to 314 items. And if we're going to learn one by one, it's going to take some time. So that's another reason it's important to have someone with experience in the workload to help us do that in an efficient manner. And so how does a well-architected review process work? So first, we like to make it clear what's not a goal, what's not the objective for a well-architected review. It's not an auditing because, first of all, we don't ask for evidence. We're going to say, oh, how does your backup work? You don't have to get to us and send us a screenshot showing how the backup is going. I mean, if you say it's okay according to best practices, we will trust you. I mean, it's something that's important for the company to improve. We've seen company actually do the opposite. They say, oh, I don't do anything because I want to see what I can improve. So that's not good also. We need to really understand how things are done, because an architect that's trained in the framework will understand, is that okay? It's not okay. It will help you get to that decision. You're, at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to say, okay, I'm okay with that, and we can go forward. Also, it's not the goal to seek someone that's responsible for something that's not being done. We're all learning. We're always looking for improvement. So it's really to give us an overview and help us build an action plan. But we don't want to point fingers or anything like that. It's not a measure of progress, or it's not a timeline of improvements. Like I said, the review itself, it's going to help us build an action plan for improvements. But that's not what the review does. The review is really an understanding of how our workloads is, so we can over time build this action plan and continuously improve. And finally, it's not an assessment by AWS or by the partner, excuse me, related to the team skill. And that's actually one of the best things about the well-architected framework. I really see as one of the biggest improvements for our customers. Their maturity related to building and operating solutions in the cloud after they do a well-architected review, it just increases so much in such a short time, because it really gives a clear view of what are the best practices. I see a lot of companies that they know they have things to improve. I mean, everyone has things to improve related to security, but where to start? And sometimes that's a challenge. And when we work on the review, we can build that plan. We can understand priorities, and that really, really helps. And who has to participate in the review? It's important that we have a few leaders, not everyone, because the review process, we do it in three-hour sessions. So different people do it in a different manner. We've done one-day sessions, but it really took a lot of time. So we separate it in three-hour sessions, 2 pillars per session. And so recommend that CTOs participate, application business owners, development leaders, security leaders, product owners, and all that. And whoever in the team can contribute with information of how the workload is. And we understand that for some companies, it's hard to stop an entire team. I mean, so many people for so long. So what we recommend is that a few people that have a nice overview of the solution as a whole, they participate. But for example, the person that's head of security, he'll participate in the security pillar. The one that's head of development will look at performance, for example. But then there's someone that can look as a high view of everything, because sometimes the security will say this is done this way because of some reason, and then the development leader will say something else. And if someone, for example, CTO has an overview of everything, he'll help us understand and make that so the whole team doesn't have to participate. If everyone is able, like we said, it is a nice moment to improve the team's maturity related to developing cloud solutions. And in the review session, so a certified solutions architect, like we said, at least professional level that has been through the well-architected framework training, will help in the review. It will understand each item in the customer's reality. This review was based on AWS's operation of operating, millions of workload around the world and how they get these best practices. But we try to understand that in the customer's reality. And we also build notes to support the plan. Like we said, we do the checklist that we mentioned. We understand according to the customer's reality, and we fill in the notes to see what's being done, what's not, and those notes will help us in the action plan. Like we mentioned before, the items are considered high risk, so we recommend these be remediated in short term. Medium risk, so we recommend these in the long term. And low risk, they are good to have, but if you don't, that is okay. And high risk usually is related to something that is really important to have. Medium risk usually looks at kind of optimization, improvement over time. And low risk is usually related to, automating and make things work automatically. And when we look at things, we also consider some different aspects. I'll talk about it later, not just the risk. And this is the report that AWS generates. So it is a PDF. It's a bunch of pages. For each question, we have that. So this question was considered high risk because the customer selected some choices, but they didn't consider other choices. And one or more of these choices are high risk. So that's why the question is considered high risk. We have notes, so this is an example note. It is optional, and if we fill that, will come into the report, and some information to help with the improvement plan. It is nice, but we don't think it's enough to build the improvement plan. A PDF, that's so static. How are we going to plan over time and improve? We're going to generate a new PDF and then compare. That's not so efficient. So what we like to do, we have what we call the well-architected dashboard. That's something that we developed for our customers, where we have a nice action plan. I'm actually going to show the dashboard live here. So this is a sample company. We don't have now of course I'm not going to show customer details. So these are the questions, these are the items, and these are the pillars. So for example, operational excellence, for this example, they don't have one single question done right. Security, they have around 40% of the questions done right. This example was built before the sustainability pillar was launched, so nothing related to that. But let's go give an overview. Oh, and something that's quite interesting, we also have lenses. So a lens is another set of questions related to specific workloads. For example, there's a data analytics lens that will give us some more details and more questions related to data and analytics workload, and there are a bunch of lenses that we could use. And if we go here, take a deep dive in each pillar, we can build an action plan. We can understand for each pillar how are the items, and we can build an action. We can see the sections that we mentioned, and we can have the questions. So enforce encryption, use temporary credentials, and we can filter what's high risk, what's unresolved, and build an action plan. And these, we have a recommendation here. We already have kind of an order to recommend. We also consider, besides the risk, we also considered how long it takes and how complex it takes to improve. So that's a little bit about the AWS Well-Architected framework. I really hope you enjoyed the presentation. It's really nice to be here at the Core Connections event, contributing and helping people to understand how to operate workloads in the cloud. It was awesome being here. My name is Felipe. If you look for me on LinkedIn, Felipe Barreto, F-I-L-I-P, Barreto, 2 R's and 2 T's. And it will be a pleasure to give a deeper dive in the AWS Well-Architected framework and understand how we can contribute to build more reliable, more efficient, and better workloads in the cloud. Thank you so much for your time and have a great event. Bye.